My mom was just a wild child, period. Like, and that's how she defined herself. I'm different, and sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. Like sometimes she called herself different, like I'm wild and I'm different and I'm unconventional and I'm, creative and like things that are not normal. But then there was another side of her that she defined herself as, I don't fit in. I'm not normal. I'm not like everybody else, but not in a good way. And let me fix myself. What do I have to do to fix myself? So it was kind of like two people in one body. Like one, like she promoted that I'm different, I'm wild, I'm crazy, I'm fun. And then the other side of her that's like, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. How do I fix myself so I can fit in like my family wants me to? Nanny was not as concerned about appearances as she was. Nanny was concerned about beauty. She wasn't concerned about what was more important to her than status was beauty. Like that your hair was pretty and that your skin was pretty and that your clothes were pretty. Like that was what was important to Nanny. Granny, what was important to her was where you went to college and what degrees you have and where do you live, what part of town do you live in, and what does society, what organizations are you a member of, and those kind of things, like that status, that societal status, that was like more important to her. So they were different in that. So I don't think that Nanny wasn't as much as, look, when I didn't get the biracial hair, it was, I don't need them. when I didn't get the silky hair, then it was like, oh, it was pointless. Even though Coleman's have fine hair, even though my hair is kinky, but hey. We have my grandmother who's like, hey, you need to not embarrass the family. Don't have a baby out of wedlock. Don't get on dope. That was the biggest thing. Just don't get on dope. Whatever dope is. I don't know quite what dope is, but whatever dope is, don't get on it. Don't have a baby out of wedlock. Don't embarrass the family. Like, go to school. Get yourself together. And, and that was one message that she got. But then she got another message where, my mom was beautiful, like beautiful. And she was fair-skinned. And so then she got the message from society that you could do whatever you want to do. That wild side, that's the kicker right there. That's what you need to leverage, because that's your ticket right there. That because you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. Do that. You can get along. You don't really need all that college stuff. All that. You don't need all that. You don't need all that societal stuff, because you got that. You got the beauty side. Go with that. So it's like a balance of, society says that I'm good just like this because I'm beautiful. And then there's the other side of like, well, no, beauty ain't enough, where Nanny said beauty's enough. So Nanny was on the side with society, like beauty's all you need. But Granny's like, no, you need status and you need money and you need a good job and you need degrees and all those things. So she just had mixed messages. Everybody wants the love of their family. I think every human being wants the approval of their mom, of their parent, or grandparents. Like even with me, my mom didn't have any expectations of me. The expectations came from my grandmother. And had I grown up with Helen Coleman, I would have had expectations on that side, because she was very similar to my grandmother, except for Helen Coleman, from what I know, my grandmother on my mom's side was sweet. Even though she was, judgmental, she was sweet and kind. And she would give you the shirt off her back. She was always working in the community. All of my grand people were teachers. So they all had a role in the community they taught in very poor communities. So they were always looked up to because they were always very loving and caring and no matter what they taught, that if you have an education, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whoever. That's all you need. You just need a foundation of an education, and you can do whatever you want to do. And I want to give that to you. I want to make sure, if nothing else, the world might not give you anything else, but all my grandmother, Granny, Nanny, my Aunt Alice, Uncle VJ, all of them, they were all teachers. My great-grandmother and her husband, Big Papa, they were all teachers. They were all educators. They used to call my great-grandfather Professor Lyons, because Lyons is my family name. And they all were known and revered in the community. So they had a certain status, but it definitely wasn't because of money. It was just because of, there's the other side of them they were always contributing to the community and wanted people to know how to read and know how to do math, because these were really poor country communities in North Louisiana, where half the people couldn't read. But they were like, no, I'm going to give you something that if you just get this little piece, you could take off. You can do whatever you want to do. So that was the side that they were very kind and very loving, even though they had the other side too. They had the side of they were always helping with giving out food, that the government would provide food. And I don't know how they got hooked up in this was their role, but people knew if you go to them, they have food, they have cheese, they have bread, they have I don't know how they got to be the people who handed the food out, but they did. It was Granny and Nanny and Aunt Alice, and people would know that not only you could get the food, that the government rations or whatever they were, I don't even know. They used to have a name for them, but they had these food, and they would give them, if you came over, they'd give it to you. But we also had a garden in the back. And so if you wanted squash, if you wanted cucumbers, if you wanted tomatoes, they'd also go back and get some vegetables. You can get whatever you want. So they were known as the people who were looked at as rich, but they had nothing, they had no money. They just had resources and gave whatever they had. And so they were considered, people thought that they were well off, but they really weren't. They were just giving. But that other side, on the Coleman side, which my grandmother, again, I didn't grow up with her, so I didn't have the same experience, but I hear stories, and a lot of people have stories about how, and she was a teacher also, and a lot of people have stories about how she contributed to them in their lives, and when they were in college, when they were at Tennessee State, that she would offer for them to come over to dinner, and she'd make dinner for students and kids, family who was in town at school, and say, oh, come over, I'll make you some dinner. And that she would, and a lot of people refer to my grandmother as somebody who was, very supportive. Again, I didn't really grow up with her, so I didn't know her as well, and she's deceased now. But again, it's very interesting that kind of double-sidedness of them, or the oxymoron. It's but they both are looked at as people who are supportive and caring, and people that you can go to for help. That's the main thing. They were both looked at, if you need help, go to these people and they will help you. So there's that side. Because like I said, it was a very interesting dynamic where they had a very loving side. There were warm memories of coming home after church on a Sunday, and everybody laying around reading the newspaper and making dinner, and people coming over from church and having dinner with us, and us laughing. There's laughter and talking and gossip about the community going on in the house. Those are great memories. And people loved oh my gosh, people loved my grandmother. People loved Nanny. They didn't love Nanny as much, but they looked at Granny as the sweet one and Nanny as I won't say the mean one, but for lack of a better word, we'll say the mean one. But she just wasn't as sweet as Granny. And because they were together all the time, they would always be compared. So, and Granny was 2 shades lighter than Nanny. So Nanny, I always thought that everybody loved her the most because she was light-skinned. But she really wasn't light-skinned. She was just a couple of shades lighter than she was. But so Nanny always had some color issues. And so that's why Nanny's thing was always like, okay, you know, well, I might not be the prettiest, but guess what? I'm gonna be the richest. So Nanny would buy houses, and some kind of way she figured out how to start businesses, and, you know, would own rental properties, and she would always have nice clothes and have the prettiest hair. And, you know, because she went to beauty school at the Madam C.J. Walker Beauty School. Yes. And so she was a beautician, and she would marry, you know, and her husbands would always be like the finest men around. So like whenever she would get a new husband, that you better believe that they would be good looking and wavy hair, and she had the best men. So that's why that was her thing. She was like, okay, well, I might not be the prettiest, but guess what? I'm about to be the richest, and I'm gonna have the finest men, and I'll show you. But again, like, people are always just trying to get their needs met. Is it right? Is it wrong? Neither. She was just figuring out how to get her needs met to make herself feel worthy, you know? When you look back at life, because, you know, a lot of times you think that, oh, you know, their mom said something to her one day and that totally changed their life. That's not always the case. Sometimes it could be just a comment as you're walking down the street, a comment you overhear some adults having, like, oh, you know that the other one is the pretty one. You never know. I don't know. But a lot of times we think that the things that shape who we are the things that are said to us by our family or our parents. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just an experience. Like, I remember an experience that I had when I was in private school, where I had on a uniform. Because again, you know, my mom, we were in Nashville. My mom was a single mom. So we weren't rolling in the dough. And I'm sure that white dad wasn't sending back cash to make sure I was taken care of. But I was going to private school because, of course, education was important in our family. And I remember, I guess one of the other parents had given my mom some uniforms that one of the other students had outgrown or something like that. And I remember a comment that one of the students, that the mom, the kid of the mom, the kid saw me, the girl was like, oh, you have on my hand-me-down uniforms. And I just remember thinking, like, being so embarrassed, because of course she said it in front of a bunch of people. And I just remember being so embarrassed that this girl would, you know, that I had on hand-me-down uniforms. And it's very interesting, you know, when you think about it, it's like, well, one, how did she know that I was the one that got the uniforms? And why would her mom tell her who, you know, all of these things? But all that to say, you think that the things that shape people are things that their family says, and that's not always the case. It could be and I don't know, but I know that I just remember thinking, like, I will never have anybody thinking again that I have on hand-me-down clothes. I just remember, and I was like, I had to be like in the 2nd or 3rd grade. I wasn't that old. I was young. I was a kid, maybe 4th, may have been 4th grade, maybe in 4th or 5th grade. But I just remember that when that happened, I said, I will never have anybody thinking that I have on hand-me-down clothes. And unfortunately, one of the things that could, and I don't think life is life. So you're going to pick up some things, period. You're going to have experiences, and that's going to shape you, because that's what life is. Life is shaped by experiences. And the more we start to form and shape our children as young as possible, for them to know who they are. But I think parents are so busy trying to live and exist and just make sure that the lights are on and food is on the table, that especially when I was a kid, I don't even think that people were focused on, let me make sure that my kid is whole and complete. They're like, let me make sure the lights are on. But I think had I had a better sense of self, of like, what does it matter what this person thinks about me? Like, I'm wonderful, I'm great, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that. Like, had my identity of self been a bit more established, and of course, I'm still young, you're going to be affected. So that's of course. But for the fact that I had no sense of self, zero sense of self. So because I didn't have, I wasn't, my mom was not to me the way I am to my son, where ever since he came out of the womb, it's always like, hey, you're special. You have unique gifts. Love who you are. They're different than other people. Everybody has different gifts. You value your gifts. People should value their gifts. You're wonderful. You're amazing. You're a great person. These are the things I see in you that are wonderful. You're a great friend. You're funny. You're great at math. I would be specific in having him know these are the things I see in you. And I want you to spend time seeing the things that are in you that are special, because you're special, and value who you are as a person. You matter. And I said, no matter what other people say about you, that's not a God made you who you are. That is what determines who you are, your skills, your values, your character. People can say whatever they want to say, but you don't change. You stay the same. People change, but your values, who you were created to be, that's gonna always last, regardless of what people say, what people think about you, who they say you are, what they say about you. That's not what's real. You determine what's real. But I never had anything like that. Now, and again, does that land on deaf ears? I don't know, but I'm gonna say it, and hopefully it sinks in, and hopefully it makes a difference. But I think if we spent a little bit more time trying to just help kids love themselves and accept themselves. But I mean, and again, it's a matter of maturity. There's only so much that they're going to be able to know, because you're still learning, you're still growing, and your experiences form who you are. And I feel like the more tools you have to go through this life, the better off you are. So, to be really honest, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I think it happened the way it was supposed to happen. That's the truth. Like, I don't know what life would have been like had I grown up with those people in my life at that time. Like, did I have the tools that I would have needed to have encountered my grandmother, who was very, very judgmental? When I was young, like I was telling somebody earlier, I was very green. Like I was really green. Like I didn't know when people were being sarcastic. I didn't know when people wished ill for me. Like I didn't know when people were doing things behind my back. I was just oblivious. Now, and in retrospect, I'm like, that was a pretty good life, because I didn't know. I was never like, oh my gosh, they don't like me, or they this. I was just like happy as a lark going along, like, oh, everything's good. I was just that way. But yeah, I think that I don't know that I would be the person that I am today had I been introduced, had things been different, period. Had things been different and my mom made a different decision, I don't know that I would be sitting right here having this conversation today. I think it happened just the way it was supposed to happen. I wouldn't change anything. What do they say? I wouldn't take nothing from my journey. I wouldn't change anything, because I was having a conversation with somebody last night who was like, well, your mistake was that you got married. And yeah, it didn't work out, but I don't know that it was a mistake. I think it was a learning lesson. I think my intentions at the time were good. Like, I had a baby, and because I had my son before I was married, but I was in a relationship. I mean, we were together. I just decided I wanted to make it formal because, of course, my grandmother's in my head. Well, why, if y'all are living together, y'all love each other, y'all have a baby, why wouldn't y'all get married? Y'all should get married. So this, my grandma's voice is in my head. I'm like, well, we should get married because, what is it going to look like when Alexander's in school and, his parents aren't married, we just all live together and that looks crazy. Like, we should get married, So my intentions were I wanted to create a suitable household for my son where his mom and dad were married and committed and we're a, regular American family and we're normal, So that's my intention was to create stability for my child. So those were good intentions. Now, was it a mistake? I mean, you could look at it however, but good things came out of it, bad things came out of it. That's life. You make decisions and good things come out of them and bad things come out of them. And so you just, who knows what's a mistake and who knows what's just a part of your journey? And are any of them mistakes? Or is it just a part of your journey and a part of your learning? Who knows? I don't know. Who knows? But I feel like everything that I went through, like if you could say, oh, if I could go back in time, I never would have dated my ex-husband because he ended up being blah, blah, blah. Well, I never would have had my son. That's the most amazing gift ever. And yeah, I hated that things didn't work out. Like, in fact, I was willing to just really make some compromises that I shouldn't have been willing to make. Not like stepping out or anything like that, but just like being unhappy because I just, at a certain point, I just wanted my son to be happy. I wanted him to have, because he was so crazy about his dad. And I just wanted him to have both of his parents. And I got to the point where I said, you know what? I'll be unhappy. I'll be unhappy for the next 18 years so he can have both of his parents in the house, because that was so important to me. And not think, and my logical mind knew that's not what you want to show your child. That vibe, that energy, that lack of love, that lack of passion he would see every day between his parents, that's not what you want him to learn that love looks like, that marriage looks like. You don't want him to learn that. But in my mind, what overruled that was he's so crazy about his dad. He's going to be heartbroken, with his dad gone. I'll do anything to make it work. But then when, my ex presented me with a deal breaker that I was just like, no. That I will not let him observe. I will not let him observe a situation that I feel will diminish his opportunities to be a good man and a good husband. That I won't do. So I have to cut this. Again, choices. Was it the right choice? I don't know. But I feel like every decision that I made, whether or not it was looked at as a mistake or not, led me to where I am today. Man, I feel like names have a lot to do with defining who you are. That's why when I named my son, I was very cautious and careful, and it was something I really thought about because people put their own things on names. Somebody might say the name Alexander, and you'll have 12 different automatic assumptions of what that person is like. Somebody might say Heather, 30 different assumptions of what that person is like. Automatically, like off the rip, your name is what people automatically, before they see you, they can just see your name on a piece of paper, and they automatically in their mind start to create who you are. And so your name is important. Well, you know what? It wasn't as much prestige. It was more so when you're looking to get a job and when people see your name on a resume. Heather Fatsinger, they automatically think I'm white. So it's just like, yeah, call her in. She looks great. I say that, but then sometimes I wish if I didn't change my name, then that I had given my son my ex-husband's last name. But at the time, I thought we were going to stay married, so I didn't think it was Because I just hadn't done it. And so I was like, well, eventually I'll change my name. It's just I've been busy and I got stuff going on and I'll do it one day. It just wasn't a priority. But I wish my son and I had the same last name. So, but here is the conundrum of life. Some of those things are good, because some of those things drove me to have accomplishments in my life that are good and important. And, on one hand you say, oh, they make me who I am, but they don't make me who I am, but they are things that allow me to provide things for my child that I want to provide for him, and opportunities and life experiences that had I not been driven to have some of the accomplishments that I've had, I would not be able to do the things that I do. So there's good there. And let me not at all get it twisted. I am proud of all of my accomplishments. Anything that I have, any degree, anything that I have, I am proud of that, because they weren't easy. And at the same time, you have to get to a point where you would be okay and love yourself and accept it. If you didn't have those degrees, would you love yourself as much? You got to get to that point of like, okay, I can do, because a lot of times you're just trying to prove to yourself that you can do it. That's the main thing. Like, can I do it? I know that that's what they expect me to do, but can I do it? And then once you did it, you're like, I can do it. That's awesome. I can do it. Okay, so now you can do it. Now let's just accept yourself for being. Just accept yourself. You're good enough. You're smart enough. You're kind enough. You have enough love. You have enough support. You're okay. You're okay. So I think even though that side, that judgmental side, and I would be willing to bet that a lot of people in my same era can relate to those expectations of grandparents and parents. I just didn't have a parent that had that, because my mom was wild, so she didn't have any but my family had expectations. But I think that on the other hand, I think that was a good thing. It was a good thing that they had high expectations of us. And the same with my son. Like, if nobody has any expectations of you, then that means they don't believe in you. And if nobody believes in you, then where does that leave you? So it's good for people to have expectations of you. It's just then when you get into where's the cutoff? Where's the balance where people are encouraging you to think, or you start to develop the thought that these are the things that make me worthy of love, of self-respect. This is what makes me worthy. It's like, that's when you kind of get into the area of like, no, you're worthy regardless. But these are great accomplishments. And you're worthy regardless of any of this. You're worthy just because God put you here, and that's enough. You're worthy just because of that. That alone is enough. You're worth love just because of that.